talk now about something that I think you will find extremely interesting. I know 2 or 3 of you here have heard part of this before. How many have heard about the KAI instrument and problem-solving style diversity? Okay, good. Most of you haven't. Of all the things I learned when I was managing the center at DuPont, this is what changed my life the most. I use it all the time. Creativity comes in flavors. It's a new concept. There are different flavors of creativity, and it's all creative. And it's all important to business. So no matter what flavor you happen to have, rejoice, because it can help you find the right job and show you how you can create value. And the people who measure over here are those who use their high creativity to perfect the existing system. They'll make it better. They make it faster. They make it cheaper. They do continuous improvement. They make things work. And they bring very high business value to any business. And you don't have a business without people who prefer to use their creativity this way. But by contrast, the people over here are those who will use their creativity to change the system. Rather than perfecting something that's there, they'd rather throw out the old and put a new one in. These are agents of change. These people are agents of stability. Okay? The people in the middle happen to be very flexible people, and they can bring an especially important attribute to the group of group cohesion and being able to move their behavior to either side as the job might demand. Pretty flexible people. Thomas Edison, 1,093 patents. How many would say he was creative? Absolutely. How many would say he was on the right or the left? And before you answer, here are some quotes that are on the walls of the National Inventors Hall of Fame. My first impulse on taking any apparatus into my hand is to seek a way of improving it, and I never work on anything that didn't already have a working model. What do you think? Yeah. Highly creative, my goodness gracious. He changed the face of America, you know. And highly creative, highly effective, and very wealthy. And on the left. And by contrast, another man who had no U.S. patents, a naturalized American citizen, 0 patents. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And Ron, you'll like this. Since I spent my career in research, if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't call it research, would we? So all Einstein did, of course, was to help us understand how to view the universe in a totally different way and upset all of our thinking about how that worked. And he was not interested in near-term stuff. It just did not concern him. He was much different in his thinking than that. Now, all styles are creative. This is the point of those last slides, is that Edison is creative over here, and Einstein is creative over here, and it's all creative. It's not a question of amount, it's a question of style. Certainly you will agree that Edison's style of being creative and Einstein's were totally different. Now, learning point number 2. You can put jobs on the scale. I call it the job demand for problem-solving styles, because clearly some jobs demand that you behave over here. Some jobs demand that you behave over here. Now notice I use the verb behave. We first talked about orientation and where you are, and that can be quite different from your behavior. Your behavior is always a choice. Your orientation is never a choice. So you can choose to behave over here even if your preference is over here, and vice versa. So some jobs demand that you behave over here. Some jobs demand that you behave over here. And I'm going to ask a few questions about jobs that you folks have in your company. How many think accounting and finance is on the left? How many think it's on the right? Well, here's one of the first ahas you're going to have. I guarantee this is going to be an aha for you when I show you the next slide. And there is accounting and there is finance. Financial people find the money. Accounting people watch it. Totally different functions and responsibilities and demands, and yet sometimes we'll have one person and call him or her the senior vice president for finance and accounting. And it turns out they can do one or the other better than the other, depending on where they are here on this scale. How about sales and marketing? On the right? You guys are smart. You got it all figured out. Sales and the classically defined roles. Now, you may define yours differently, but marketing is over here, creating demand in the public's eye, and sales is keeping track of the forecast and looking at trends and doing production planning and all the stuff that sales does. Totally different. I was doing this for a small company up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and the CEO ran a company that makes rubber-covered rolls for the paper business up there. And the CEO saw this, and he says, that explains it. For the first time, I now see clearly why we got such a lousy marketing department. We hire people into sales positions, and if they do really well, we promote them into marketing. Isn't that stupid? I said, yes, sir, that is pretty stupid. The path to progression in his company, and I say, and I dare say in most companies, is from sales to marketing. And yet we don't move them back. He said, it's too embarrassing. We keep them there, and they do a lousy job. He says, that gives rise to the Peter principle. Isn't that right? I said, you've just now described it exactly. Where do you think your surgeon ought to be? Right or left? Left. Exactly right. Ron, in the unlikely event that you needed a brain surgeon, you do want him to behave, or her to behave, on the left. Do what's expected. And you might not even, you won't be Ron when you wake up, if you wake up at all. Here it is. Medical practitioners down here delivering care in an excellent way, prescribed by the FDA, folks. And over here, it's changing the way things get done. Which is more important to your long-term health? And of course, we know the answer. All of it's important. Is that what happens if your orientation isn't anywhere near what your behavior is required to be? Well, we have an interesting situation that comes about because of that, and we call it coping. And here's the way that works. I've got a close friend in Richmond, Virginia, who's a pharmacist. He's been a pharmacist now for some 29 years or so. And on this questionnaire, he measures 91. And yet we know how to get a job number now. I know how to do that. And so the job for the pharmacist job demand is about 65 here. So every day when Steve has to go to work, what he'll do, of course, what all of us have to do, is to move our behavior from our area of preference to the area demanded by the job. That's the coping distance, the distance over which that person has to cope. You ever tried to appear to be or act as if you're somebody who you really aren't? That's coping, and it takes energy, and here's the equation for that. You won't forget this. It's so important. The energy of coping is equal to this distance of coping right here, multiplied by the time expected to continue it over your career. He's done that job 29 years. Coping distance for him turns out to be 1.7 standard deviations. A very highly significant number, very high coping energy. What do you think the fallout is? Stress, burnout. He hates to go to work. How sad. What would you like? How would you feel, Ron, if your surgeon really didn't want to get up and go to work on the day of your operation? Not so good. Not so good. The point here is, and it's so important, I'm going to repeat it twice, it's really critical, is that your long-term job satisfaction is inversely proportional to your coping distance between what your job requires and what you prefer to get. Again, your long-term job satisfaction is inversely proportional to the coping distance between what your score is and what your job requires you to do.